podcast where truth moves faster than a Holstein calf. No waiting on some pretty page. We're charting new ground in the digital age. From genomic codes to row-out facts, we cut through the noise, no holding back. Not your daddy's dairy news tonight. We're sparking debates with every insight. The ring's not where the real fight's at. It's in the data, in the channel chat. From pasture to processor to your morning cup, we're raising the stakes. Try and get ahead of herd. Yeah! Where the future's more than just a word. Ahead of herd. Come on! The bullvine's calling, let your voice be heard.
Welcome to the Bullvine Podcast, where we cut through the industry noise to deliver the hard-hitting insights that actually move your operation forward. I'm your host, and today we're tackling a problem that's silently bleeding money from dairy operations across the industry: retained placentas. If you think retained placentas are just an unavoidable part of dairying, think again. We're diving deep into research that shows each case is costing you exactly $389, and that's just the beginning. Most producers accept rates of 10 to 15% when leading operations consistently maintain rates below 5% through targeted nutritional strategies. In today's episode, we'll break down the real financial impact hitting your bottom line, expose the nutritional deficiencies that are setting your transition cows up for failure, and give you the exact supplementation protocols that progressive dairies are using to virtually eliminate this costly condition. This episode features an AI-generated analysis of our latest feature article, synthesizing the latest research from the Journal of Dairy Science, University of Florida Studies, and real-world success stories from operations that have slashed their retained placenta rates by over 60%. Whether you're running 50 cows or 5,000, the science is clear, and the solutions are proven. Let's get started.
Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine a single health event on your dairy hitting you for $389. Not, over the year, but per cow, per time it happens. Mm-hmm. That figure is the immediate hook in the Bullvine article we're diving into today, and it really makes you stop and think.
That $389 number for a retained placenta case, yeah, it immediately elevates it from maybe a routine nuisance to a really significant financial drain. Mm-hmm. It's way more costly than a lot of producers might realize.
Exactly. And that's the core of our topic today: retained placentas in dairy cows. It's incredibly common, yes, but the angle in this Bullvine article, it's titled Profit Drainage: Preventing Retained Placentas Through Nutrition. It really challenges the common wisdom. It makes a very strong case that this isn't just about bad luck or, genetics. It's primarily a nutrition problem.
Right. And our mission in this deep dive is basically to take this compelling Bullvine article, sort of cut through the noise, really understand the true cost of retained placentas on your farm, including maybe some hidden costs, and zero in on the practical nutrition-based strategies the article highlights.
Okay.
These are the methods progressive dairies are using to not just manage, but virtually eliminate this issue. We're talking directly to you, the dairy farmer, the herd manager, everyone in the industry who feels the pinch of these, preventable problems.
So let's start with that headline number then, $389 per case. Where does that specific cost actually come from? What's making it so expensive?
Well, there was a 2018 study in the Journal of Dairy Science, the article references it, and it broke it down pretty clearly. The biggest hit, $287, that's from lost milk production.
Okay, wow.
Then you've got about $73 due to delayed breeding, pushing out that next lactation. And finally, maybe $25 accounts for the increased risk of other diseases that often follow a retained placenta.
Lost milk, delayed pregnancies, and setting the cow up for more problems. Man, when you stack those up, that $389 starts to feel very, very real.
It does.
And the Bullvine article gives a relatable example. A 500-cow dairy with a retained placenta rate of just 10%, which, frankly, the article argues way too high.
Way too high, yeah.
As potentially bleeding nearly $20,000 annually just from this one issue.
It's really worth taking a moment right now to think about your own operation. What's your herd size? What's your current retained placenta rate? Even if it's, say, 5% or 7%, plug those numbers into that $389 figure. Mm-hmm. What's it actually costing your farm? The amount might surprise you.
And it gets worse for your most valuable animals, right? The article points out mature cows are hit much harder financially.
That's right. That same study found the cost is $313 for multi-Paris cows, compared to only $150 for first calf heifers. So your higher producing, your proven cows, they're costing you more than double when they have this issue. And as the bovine article really emphasizes, a retained placenta, it rarely exists in isolation. It's a major trigger for metritis, that painful and costly uterine infection.
Right, the follow-on problem.
Exactly. University of Florida research mentioned in the article tax on another $171 to $386 per metritis case. So if a retained placenta leads to metritis, you could easily be looking at a total bill nearing, $775 per cow?
That's getting alarmingly close to $1,000 for a chain reaction of health issues that potentially start with something preventable. And this is where the bovine article really lands its punch, challenging that old belief that RPs are just, part of the game.
Yeah.
It states plainly, they are often not just bad luck or genetics. The article makes a compelling case that they stem from nutritional issues that can be identified and fixed.
And that's such a critical mindset shift, isn't it? Instead of just treating the retained placenta and then the metritis that follows, you're focusing on actually preventing the underlying cause in the first place.
Right. Stop it before it starts. Speaking of causes, the bovine article points out a really interesting seasonal warning sign that maybe many producers might overlook. Retained placentas often spike during winter months.
That's right. And research, like a study mentioned from 2019, ties this directly back to a common issue in winter: dietary carotene deficiency, when cows don't have access to fresh forage. Stored feeds, they lose vitamins over time.
Okay, so it's not just the cold weather itself, it's the change in feed causing a vitamin problem. Makes sense. And Dr. Rafael Bissinotto at the University of Florida, he's quoted in the article, offers specific nutritional adjustments for those winter months.
Yeah, he recommends boosting vitamin A significantly, up to 100,000 IUs per day, and increasing vitamin E to 2,000 IU per day, particularly when cows aren't out on pasture.
2,000, okay.
Yeah. He also stresses the need to be really vigilant about your stored feed quality, and maybe considering beta-carotene supplementation, 300, 500 milligrams per day if needed.
And the article does the math for you on that beta-carotene. It costs about $1.85 per cow per day. Now, that sounds like something you might pause at initially.
Right.
Until you remember you're trying to prevent a $389 problem.
Precisely. It just puts the cost of targeted prevention into perspective against the massive cost of just, accepting the problem, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Because accepting a high retained placenta rate, as the article demonstrates, it just sets off this whole expensive cascade. The Merck Veterinary Manual suggests typical prevalence is like 5-15%, but the leading operations, they're consistently below 5%.
Right. And the connection to other issues is just undeniable. The Journal of Dairy Science highlighted back in 2012 that cows that experience milk fever are 4 times more likely to develop retained placentas.
4 times, that's huge. So calcium metabolism goes wrong, dramatically increasing RP risk, which then skyrockets the risk of metritis.
Exactly.
And the USDA estimates metritis costs the industry between, $665 and $900 million annually? That's enormous.
Massive numbers.
Yeah. And the bovine article asks a very pointed question. How much of that enormous cost is coming directly out of your pocket because you haven't prioritized reducing retained placentas?
Thinking about it as a chain reaction really makes that upfront investment in prevention feel far more urgent. You got to stop it at the source.
Okay, so if nutrition is the key lever here, what are the specific nutrients we really need to dial in? The article dives deep into 4 crucial ones.
Yeah, and this is where the science gets really fascinating. The article explains the underlying issue isn't simply like a mechanical failure. It's actually a breakdown in the cow's own immune system right at the connection point between the cow and the placenta.
Okay.
Specifically, these tiny immune cells called neutrophils, which is supposed to help the placenta detach smoothly, they just aren't working effectively.
Yeah.
There was research back in 2006, Dr. Gunning, that established this link to immune function.
Huh. So it's really about supporting the cow's immune system so it can do its job properly and release the placenta naturally. Which nutrients are critical for that then?
Okay, first up is one the bovine article calls the game changer: selenium.
Selenium, okay.
Point to a classic 1997 study by Dr. Larry Smith at Ohio State that had, frankly, stunning results.
Stunning how? What did they find?
Well, they were seeing a 38% retained placenta incidence rate in their herd.
38%, that's high.
Extremely high. They increased the cow's daily selenium intake from a pretty low 0.23 milligrams up to just 0.92 milligrams, still well within acceptable levels, mind you. And they saw the incidence drop all the way to 0.
Wait, from 38% to 0? just by adjusting selenium?
0%. The article recommends targeting 0.3 milligrams per kilogram of dry feed, which works out to about 6 milligrams per day total intake, and it really challenges that old school thinking that you only need just barely enough selenium.
Wow. That kind of result, it makes you reevaluate everything, doesn't it? What about vitamin E? The article calls it the silent partner.
Yeah, and the point there is that while many commercial mineral mixes might have adequate selenium these days, they often fall short on vitamin E, especially for dry cows. The Merck Veterinary Manual recommends 11,168 to 1,200 IU daily during that transition period.
Okay, so over 1,000 IU.
Right. And the bovine article pushes back on the common practice of relying only on vitamin S selenium injections. They basically call injections a short-term Band-Aid.
Right, a quick fix.
Yeah, it only lasts maybe 2-3 weeks. The truly progressive approach, they argue, is feeding sufficient levels in the daily premix, day in and day out.
Got it. Don't just use a shot as a fix, build it into the daily diet. Makes sense. Now, calcium. The article calls it the double-edged sword. Why is that?
And that's a perfect description. The counterintuitive part here is that feeding too much calcium before calving is actually detrimental.
Too much. How so?
Well, you're essentially making the cow system kind of lazy at mobilizing her own calcium reserves from her bones. Then right after calving, when milk production demands a massive amount of calcium almost instantly, her body can't access it fast enough. That leads to milk fever.
Ah, okay.
And as we just discussed, milk fever cows are 4 times more likely to have retained placentas.
So trying to prevent milk fever by oversupplying calcium before calving actually increases your retained placenta risk?
Yeah.
That's a tough concept to get your head around.
It absolutely is, but it's so critical for preventing both problems. The article gives the target sweet spot levels from the Merck Veterinary Manual, about 0.44% calcium for far-off dry cows and 0.48% for close-up cows.
0.44 and 0.48.
Exactly, and it strongly advises analyzing your ration's calcium content because exceeding these levels is actively working against you.
Analyze your feed. Simple advice, but clearly essential. And the final nutrient is protein, which the article describes as the surprising culprit. How does protein fit in?
This is really fascinating science. Research cited from the Journal of Animal Science back in 2009 found that when cows are fed low-protein diets, their placentas actually grow larger.
Larger, why?
In an attempt to absorb more nutrients from the limited supply. And these heavier, larger placentas are significantly more prone to being retained after calving. It's harder for the cow to expel them.
Wow. So cutting corners on protein to save feed costs could literally be growing your retained placenta problem down the line.
Exactly. Penny-wise on protein, dollar foolish on retained placentas and all the expensive issues that follow. The article provides target protein levels. Around 9.9% crude protein for far-off and 12.4% for close-up dry cows.
9.9 and 12.4. Got it.
Yeah. And it even cites a Journal of Dairy Science study from 2010 where simply adding some soybean meal to boost protein reduced retained placentas from a staggering 50% down to 20%.
50 down to 20. Just with protein. These scientific insights really underline why these specific nutrients are so impactful, don't they?
They really do.
And for anyone wanting a quick reference, the bovine article even includes a handy cheat sheet, right?
It does, yeah. It pulls the key nutritional requirements from the 2023 Merck Veterinary Manual for both far-off and close-up dry cows. It lists the target levels for crude protein, calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, NDF, vitamin A, and vitamin E.
Having those numbers right there, side by side, is super practical for checking your own ration or talking to your nutritionist.
Definitely. And it briefly reminds you why each is important, like the protein placenta size link we just talked about, or managing calcium to prevent milk fever and its ripple effect on RPs. It's a great little guide.
Okay, but theory is one thing. Does this approach actually deliver results on a real farm? The article includes a powerful case study, which I think is really important.
It does. It features Tom Wilson from Wilson View Dairy out in Oregon. Tom's farm was facing a 12% retained placenta rate, right in that higher end of the typical range,
12%. Yeah, that's not ideal.
No, and he wasn't willing to just accept it. So working with his nutritionist, Dr. Sarah Collins, they implemented a targeted program based on exactly these principles we've been discussing.
Okay, what specific changes did they actually make on his farm? What did they do?
The article details 3 main adjustments. First, they significantly boosted vitamin E from around 500 IU up to the recommended 1,200 IU daily.
Big jump.
Yeah. Second, they fine-tuned their DCAD program, their dietary cation-anion difference, to better manage calcium metabolism around calving. And third, they increased their close-up protein levels from about 11% up to 12.5%.
So higher levels of those key nutrients we talked about, vitamin E, managing calcium and protein, and the outcome. What happened?
The results were pretty dramatic and happened fast. Within just 3 months, their retained placenta rate plummeted from 12% down to 4.8%.
Wow. In 3 months?
Yep. And within 6 months, they were consistently operating below 3.5%.
That's cutting the problem by more than 2/3. That must have had a huge impact on their bottom line.
Oh, absolutely. According to the Bovine article, the economic impact was immediate and substantial. Tom Wilson reported a 60% reduction in fresh cow treatments overall,
60%.
a 4.3 pounds increase in early lactation milk yield, and significantly fewer metabolic issues across the board. He estimated the cost of the nutritional program paid for itself within the very first month.
Paid for itself in 30 days.
Yeah, just through those reduced treatment costs alone.
That real-world proof is incredibly compelling. Seeing that kind of return on investment in just a month really underlines that whole profit drainage idea. But let's be real for a second. Implementing a premium nutrition program like this does have an upfront cost, right?
It absolutely does, and the article addresses that head on. It acknowledges that these higher quality mineral packages might add, say, $25 to $1.45 per cow per day during that crucial 21-day close-up period.
Okay.
So that's an investment of about $5.25 to maybe $9.45 per transition cow.
Okay, so you're spending roughly $5 to $10 extra per cow in that high-risk period. But as we keep saying, you're trying to prevent a problem that costs $389.
And the article does the simple math that really cuts right to the chase. Based on that investment range, you only need to prevent one single case of retained placenta for every 41 to 74 transition cows you feed.
Just one case.
To break even on that nutritional investment. It poses the question directly, can you really afford not to make that investment when the potential loss is so high?
And that frames it perfectly, doesn't it? It's not really an expense. It's avoiding a much, much larger loss. What about producers with smaller herds? Is this approach still practical for them?
Yeah, that's a good question. Dr. Mike Hutchins from the University of Illinois, he's also featured in the article, offers practical advice specifically for herds under about 100 cows.
Okay, what does he suggest?
He suggests things like using commercially available transition top dress products, which could be easier to manage in smaller batches. Potentially using injectables for very small groups where mixing accurately is, difficult. But he stresses the non-negotiables.
Which are?
Absolute focus on forage quality and excellent bunk management to ensure consistent dry matter intake. Those basics are critical regardless of herd size.
Good to know there are scalable options. So once a producer makes these changes, how should they monitor if it's actually working? What metrics really matter?
The article suggests tracking specific things. First, obviously, your weekly retained placenta rate and set a clear goal of getting below 5%. If you're not there, ask why.
Okay, track the RP rate.
Yep. Then compare your fresh cow treatment costs before and after making the changes. Are they going down? Monitor early lactation performance. How are cows milking in the first 30 days? Are you seeing that lift like Wilson View did?
Your production, yeah.
And importantly, track body condition scores at calving, and then again, maybe 30 days into lactation. Are cows holding condition better? Are they transitioning more smoothly?
Right, those visual cues too. Measurable outcomes are definitely key to knowing if your investment is paying off. The Bovine article wraps things up with a pretty concise 5-step action plan for producers looking to get serious about this.
Yeah, it basically summarizes the path that progressive producers are taking. Number 1, implement that targeted nutrition, really focusing on selenium and vitamin E levels. Get those right. 2, actively manage calcium metabolism to prevent hypocalcemia. That's absolutely critical because of that 4 times link.
Right, the milk fever connection.
Exactly.
Right.
3, monitor your programs rigorously and demand results. If your rate is staying above 5%, something needs attention. Don't just accept it.
Be proactive.
4, calculate the real cost of retained placentas for your farm. Make that $389 number personal. Figure out what it's costing you. And 5, don't forget the basics, like maintaining clean, comfortable calving areas. The environment still plays a role alongside nutrition. That's a solid, actionable plan. Seems very doable. So what's the ultimate takeaway then, the real bottom line from this bovine deep dive?
Well, the article quotes Dr. Jose Santos from the University of Florida, who puts it really well. He says, when producers view retained placentas as a nutritional problem rather than a reproductive one, prevention rates improve dramatically.
Viewing it differently.
Exactly. The core message is that accepting 15% prevalence isn't inevitable. It's basically accepting preventable profit loss. Progressive farms are pushing towards virtually eliminating RPs, not just to, tick a box, but because it's absolutely key to optimizing that entire transition cow period and boosting overall profitability.
It completely reframes the issue, doesn't it? It shifts from how do I treat this sick cow to how do I feed this cow properly so she never gets sick in the first place.
That's it, precisely. And the article leaves you with that potent question we started with. With $389 potentially lost per case, how much longer can you really afford not to optimize your transition cow nutrition?
Yeah, that question really hits home. So we've taken a deep dive today into this bovine article highlighting how retained placentas are a major, maybe underestimated source of profit drainage.
Definitely.
We've hopefully debunked the idea that they're just unavoidable, and most importantly, laid out the specific science-backed nutritional strategies focusing on selenium, vitamin E, that tricky calcium balance, and protein that the evidence shows can dramatically reduce incidence and ultimately boost your bottom line.
The financial case for prevention is just overwhelmingly clear, and the article provides those practical steps to get there.
We really encourage you to take these insights, maybe calculate what retained placentas are truly costing your specific farm, and have a conversation with your nutritionist armed with the specific strategies and nutrient levels discussed in this bovine article.
And of course, to read the full article for yourself, see all the case study details, and review those specific nutrient levels nice and clearly, you can find it online at www.thebulvine.com.
Definitely worth checking out that full article. And just maybe a final thought to leave you with. If preventing a single $389 retained placenta case pays for the preventive nutrition for, up to 74 cows during their transition?
Yeah, potentially.
What other seemingly minor health or performance issues on your farm could be hiding massive preventable financial losses, just waiting for you to dig into the science behind them like this?
That's a great question to ponder. Where else can nutrition make a difference?
There you have it, the hard truth about retained placentas and the proven nutritional strategies to prevent them. The bottom line is simple. At $389 per case, you can't afford to keep accepting this as inevitable. The key takeaways are crystal clear. First, optimize your selenium and vitamin E supplementation during the transition period. Second, manage calcium levels carefully to prevent the cascade of metabolic issues. Third, don't shortchange protein in your close-up rations. And finally, implement seasonal adjustments for winter feeding when carotene deficiency spikes your risk. Remember, the implementation cost of just 25 to 45 cents per cow per day during the transition period pays for itself by preventing one case for every 41 to 74 transition cows. The math isn't complicated. The question is how much longer you can afford not to act. You can find the complete article with detailed nutritional requirements, cost calculators, and implementation strategies at www.thebulvine.com. We've included all the research citations, specific supplementation protocols, and real-world case studies to help you implement these changes immediately. If this episode challenged your thinking about transition cow nutrition, share it with your nutritionist, your vet, and other producers in your network. The dairy industry moves forward when we all embrace evidence-based management instead of accepting costly problems as unavoidable. Thanks for listening to the Bovine Podcast. Keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in your operation, and we'll see you next time when we continue cutting through the industry noise to deliver the insights that matter. Until then, stop accepting preventable losses and start optimizing for profit.